I'm your host. My next guest, I'm super privileged to have him on. He covers a broad range of different roles in the storytelling space. So I don't know exactly how to describe him or address him. So I just call him a Maori storyteller. He's been in the industry for years and years, and he's jumped from different roles, from directing to producing to writing. Told short films, made short films, films, TV, television series, all different genres, documentaries, and everything in between. I had the privilege of meeting this man a few years ago, and we've done a couple of things over the years, but very privileged and honoured to speak tonight with our latest guest, Tainui Stephens. Tainui, kia ora, kei te pēhea.
Hei te pai hoki au e hoa mihana ki a koe te hau mihana ki o hoa karanga maha katoa hakarongo mai ana ki a tāua. It's lovely to see you, bro. Thank you for the chance to chat.
Oh, no, thank you. I think I can speak for our Graph Grims community when I say we're privileged and we're very grateful for you for sharing your time with us this evening. E te whānau, everybody who's listening or watching live, thank you. Everybody who's watching the replay, thank you. I appreciate you fellas for lending your ears and your eyes and your minds. I'd like you to come into this conversation with an open mind and an open book, because Tainui has years of experience, and compounded on top of that, learned from other people with years of experience as well. So if we can condense as much as we can to just an hour kōrero with you, Tainui, we're privileged and excited. So just as a starting point, what's the latest thing that you've been working on, and how has the last 2 years impacted your mahi?
Well, the latest thing I'm working on at the moment is a kaupapa called Taikura. I'm here in Gisborne at the moment with some of our Māori land some of our young filmmakers from Māori land, and we're recording a kapahaka in Manutuke tomorrow. Taikura is a kaupapa kapahaka. And so part of the mahi for us is for our young filmmakers to be going out and filming these kuia karaua. And they've pulled me along to do the mihi, bro. Yeah, I don't need to direct this, because our rangatahi are doing it, and they're doing a fabulous job. So it's just, I think that's one of the things that just so excites me at the moment. As much as I have peers who I'm proud of, I'm just getting so much inspiration from working with younger people. They've got a different angle on the world, and you kind of struggle sometimes to figure out what you can contribute to them, because, you know, when I was younger, I'm fond of saying that my world ended as far as I could ride my bike. But now, of course, the world really is their oyster, and they're traversing it all the time. But while they have a breadth of knowledge that we didn't have, or I didn't have when I was their age, they don't yet have the depth. And I think that's where older people, kuia karaua, just, you know, those normal whānau dynamics will kick into play and help our young people to make sense of this busy, accelerating world. So yeah, my current mahi at the moment is a range of projects. The Māori land ones are important to me. But next week, we're off to Pangaru in Hokianga to screen our feature film on Whenekupa, To the Kupa Family. And, I suppose, yeah, it's marking the beginning of that particular film story. So I don't know, there's I'm doing a bit of writing, I'm doing all sorts of different things, and I've kind of always liked it like that.
Yeah.
I get bored easily.
You both.
So I've got to be challenged by different stuff. I just got to be doing different stuff. And I think I have a great sense of gratitude that all the stuff and the different stuff I've done over the years and the decades I've loved it all, bro. I've loved it all. There's been, sometimes I speak to young people and they say to me, oh, what's the most popular film or successful thing you've made? And I say, well, tamarikima, the most successful thing I've ever done is I've loved every day I've gone to work. And, you know, you have your shit days.
Yep.
But if you love what you do And, you know, if you can make your job, your career, or whatever you do to make some bucks, something that you're passionate about, something that grows you as a person, something that fulfills you, that to me is success greater than any award. Absolutely.
Yes.
So yeah, bro, range of different things, range of
Yeah.
different stories.
And how is the I love exactly what you said about success, and I think it's important for anybody who's listening to this to define what success is to you. You know,
Mm,
somebody else's success is not yours.
yeah,
You know, for you it could be closer than you think. It could, could be just
yeah,
around the corner.
yeah. That's a really big one, bro. I mean, sometimes I've been asking myself, one of the things we strive to be is happy. And I wonder about that because sometimes to me, happy is like a self oriented thing. It's a very selfish thing. I'm happy when I've got the kai that I love. I'm happy when I've got this, when I've got that stuff that makes me happy. And that's cool, kei te pai tērā, but I think one of the things I actually value now is actually a sense of contentment. It's
Mm.
a sense of contentment that, firstly, I'm grateful for the things I've done, but it's like the corny old Louis Armstrong song, bro. You know, what a wonderful world.
Yeah.
And when I see young people growing, and I'm moved by teenagers these days because in their faces you can see both mum and dad struggling to become whoever they really are.
Yes.
And they're also, so their bodies are stretching and they're stretching their emotions, they're trying out stuff. And it seems to me, and I've thought about this a lot recently, when you become when you become an adult and you get hooked up into things like jobs,
Mhm.
responsibility, relationships, mortgages, the things you say are sometimes colored by those responsibilities. Um, it seems to me that young people who don't yet have those responsibilities still are able to tell the truth as they see it without having to hedge their bets because of the boss, because of the bank, because of the tax man, because of the partner, whatever it is. And so, yeah, teenagers move me a lot these days. And it's tough being a teenager. Um, it's even if you think about anyone who's trying to think about having a family and buying a house, depending on where you live, there's something very bloody odd about our system when you spend years and years to raise a lot of money to put yourself in debt for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
There's something odd about all of that, bro. And so
Yes.
one of the things I'm discovering now, yes, I may be happy when I'm in my happy zone, in my man space with my music and my books and things like that. But I also appreciate a sense of contentment when I see what's happening around me, even despite all the hideous things that are going on. For example, Moana Jackson. Oh,
Mm.
ka nui te aroha ki tērā o tātou.
Aye.
Me te rawe, me te atāhu o ngā kōrero o ngā mihi ka utaina ki runga ki a ia. And it's proper that we celebrate the extraordinary man that was Moana Jackson.
Mm.
Now, when I look at that, one of the things that I just love about it is that this is the story of a man who was able to be what God made him to be.
Mm.
That to me is beautiful. We have all sorts of people in our whakapapa who are advocates, lawyers, workers, mums, whatever it is. Moana was a man who was blessed with a huge amount of gifts and a beautiful brain and heart. But most of all, he was able to be who his God and his people made him to be. And that is
Mm.
something that brings me great contentment, if you like, to know that this still lives in our people.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you said that. I read this thing. It was really just a paragraph by
Mm,
an artist that I admire. Jeff Gogwe is his name. He's an American artist,
mm,
and he's a tattoo artist. But he said this thing, and it was about his aspiration for his life.
mm,
And he talked about happiness, like wanting to be happy, and he went further, and it's along the lines of what you've said. And he
mm.
said, "I think what I want for my life is to be fulfilled."
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, for example, he gave an example, and it was if I was on my deathbed and I could be in pain, I could be sad, but if I know that I I did good by
Mm.
my moral compass and by my whānau and my community, then I'm fulfilled.
Yeah.
And then I feel okay in this pain and okay that I'm about to take my last breath. And I remember when I read it or heard it, I can't remember if it was on a video, if I read it, but I remember just thinking, whoa, that's the first time I've ever heard an example that was different to wanting to be happy. You know,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
hadn't actually thought about it more or deeply.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you hear people say all the time, and you
Mm.
sort of adopt it without
Yeah.
deciphering it or examining it.
Of course. I mean, the advertising, the commercial world that's all about us is plying us with stuff in this effort to make us happy with stuff.
Yes.
So the fulfillment that any person has, whether it's Moana by being the advocate for his people, the beloved man that he was, or someone like myself who's just loved being able to tell stories. I've long thought that I could pop my clogs tomorrow and be grateful that it didn't waste any time.
Yes.
And that leaves me great contentment, actually. And as I say, when you look at the world and it's easy to get swayed by all the awful things that are happening, but there are silver linings everywhere.
Mm.
And the truth of our whakapapa, if we sit here and we remember our old people and our tupuna with respect and admiration, those genes, that whakapapa still flows through us. And I see it all about us. It's spooky sometimes too, Te Hau, because sometimes I've gone to judge speech competitions, and sometimes you listen to these young people and they are sounding like their old people did.
Yeah.
And, it's just, there's some spooky genetics and DNA and all that stuff kind of going on, but it's all the truth about whakapapa. So I tend, I say to myself that I'm, well, I guess I'm a half glass full kind of guy, but I like to call myself a pessimist who's prepared to be pleasantly surprised and an optimist who knows that assumption is the mother of all fuck ups. So I'm swinging both ways.
Wow, right. I like
There's a lot
that.
of wonderful stuff in the world. There really is.
Yep.
Not going to see it on the TV, and you've got to
Oh,
go hunting for it on the net.
you're
But
going to see whatever you want to see as well. If
yeah,
you're
yeah,
looking for bad stuff, you'll find it. If you're looking for good stuff, you'll find it as well. It's just a bit harder.
yeah, it is harder. It's all very karmic as well. Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about teenagers and how teenagers are kind of, they don't have the burdens of adulthood
Yes.
placed upon them and restricting their way to think freely and to think without thinking about what's in the way of making dreams come true and things like that.
Yes.
And then you get to adulthood and those things become a reality. Do you have processes or practices to help you stay thinking like a teenager? To
Oh,
help.
yes, bro, I do.
Yeah.
I believe in fostering the naughty little boy within. I look at some of our queer karaua, and the ones that you love and the ones that I love and remember somehow retained an irrepressible sense of their childlike
Mm.
nature, and they would let it out, and it would be a part of them. And so I've kind of jokingly said to myself that, I'd nurture the naughty little boy within. And as I say that, and I think about the little boy that I was, just because of the way my life's kind of gone,
Mm.
I do think about those things that happened to me in my youth and my formative years. I think about it a lot. And even at the moment, I'm just having the best time going back to the music of my teen years, which were in the 70s. And so that was heavy rock, Led Zepp, all of that kind of stuff. And all that's being remastered, and it's just still wonderful, wonderful stuff. But any teenager of any era who has a musical sensibility will get turned on by those sounds. It's a very formative time. And so I'm often going back to enjoy the things that I enjoyed when I was young, mainly in terms of music, or reread books that I used to read when I was young. And I can't help but think of it. And if you raise whānau and if you're responsible with kids to a great degree, and with regard to teenagers, I think it helps if you remember the heat of those teen years. I remember
Mm.
my first relationships, discovering sex, discovering responsibility, all that kind of stuff. And I know that it can do stuff to your emotions, but I remember the heat. And I do like
Yes.
to think that it's something that we should bear in mind when we're dealing with our young people. So, in terms of protecting or looking after our childlike nature, I think that, yes, your memory is part of it too. But one of the things I guess about being a child is being unafraid to be curious. Um, because when you get older, you're inhibited from being curious. You can't do this, can't do that. A child doesn't know that. They'll just
Yes.
barge on in. And I think curiosity is a spark to your imagination and your intellect. And to retain a sense of curiosity is to retain a sense of your childlike nature.
That's it. It's funny you bring up curiosity because I created a podcast, a separate one from our Graph Grims one, and it's called Creative Curiosity, and it
Ah,
was about that. It was about um, the fact that curiosity is the spark, or I believe it to be anyway,
mm, mm.
and that's what starts you on a journey. It doesn't matter what the journey is, but
Yes.
that's what's exciting is because at the beginning it could be anything, and
Mm,
as when you're younger, that's why I love jumping into spaces like now, like the NFT space, for example.
mm,
I jumped in super naive, having no idea of what the space was like.
mm,
But I'm glad that it happened that way because if I knew what I knew now,
mm.
I would have been a bit more hesitant. I probably would have spent more time trying to make everything perfect before I
Yes.
leapt in. But when you jump in and you give yourself no choice and you
Yeah.
allow yourself to fail, even though it hurts when you fail,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
but
Yeah.
putting ourselves in that space
Yeah.
with that childlike curiosity,
Yes. Yes.
without stopping the journey from starting before it even began.
That's right. And the thing about curiosity too is if you follow your curiosity, you're engaging your bravery. And the thing is, yeah, we talk in our whakatauki about heading for the horizon. Um, that's an act of curiosity. If you look at ourselves at our molecular structures, as the protons and the atoms and the electrons are bouncing around, they're stretching out as well. I mean, it's just a part of creation, I suppose. And that's one reason why I suppose I've got a different handle on the love buzz these days. I'm not talking, I do think John Lennon was right, and that all you need is love, because love to me, it's not just a matter of your affection or romance or maternal, paternal instincts and so on, but love is the only force that actually creates. It's a creative force.
Mm.
Everything else that's not loving is actually destructive. So it's love that actually brings things together. I mean, sorry for blabbing on, but one of the things, we think about utu. We
Yep.
long thought that utu is just revenge. It's not. It's more than that. It's reciprocity. It's karmic. So if you do good, you get good back. And so if you take things like equal and opposite reaction, if something has got an equal and opposite reaction, if you actually go a bit further, the gap to me is the love, and that's where the creation starts. Um, yeah, so I think in terms of love, in terms of physics, in terms of procreation, creation, engaging our curiosity as a species, this is all elemental to our existence as human beings, shaped by
Mm.
our indigeneity.
Was there a point? Because I'm hearing how much meaning having this way about you has given your work, and given the way that you look at teenagers now and that their curiosity.
Mm.
Was there a point um, along your journey, along your life, where you felt that switch, where you were like, "Whoa, you know, this thing of love, or this thing of interconnectedness," where it felt like it just clicked and made sense? Was there a point where? that was obvious to you?
Yeah, there was, and it wasn't the love thing because there were instances of that. So that was a growing sense of experience. But for me, I guess in my teen years, my big moment, my epiphany, was simply discovering that I was Maori, really, because I was one of those people who grew up. My father went from the far north down to Ocean Beach, met my Pākehā mum down south, and they moved to Christchurch. And eventually I was born and raised in Christchurch. And my father didn't have anything to do with this culture. My mother was actually more interested in the Māori culture and was the one who gave us Māori names. Anyway, long story short, the old man shot through to Aussie. The relationship split up, and I was looking to move to university go to university after finishing school. And I had a mixed impression in my mind about being Māori because when I was at school, the teacher in one particular class would make me stand up and poke my tongue out. I was only Māori kid in this class. It was a Pākehā school, very good Pākehā school, but I was only Māori there in this time. So I was made to stand up and poke my tongue out and all that stuff that I had no idea what anything to do with this was. I look back on it, and that teacher was actually just trying to make me proud of being something that I had no reference point about whatsoever. Until, oddly enough, when I got to 7th form, I thought I'd better learn the haka so I could look good for the sisters at the girls at the sister college down the road. All of that. And when I think back of it, the words of the haka sounded like this. One of them, Guanaruba tēnei, engangurinei, o he ho. Karuta tikarangi, he yo we o we ha. I mean, it was Christchurch in the 60s, bro. But that was. I remember thinking I had to do this to be Māori. This haka, and looking back, of course, it was deficient language-wise, to say the least. But it was a first move. But I still didn't know what that meant, and it wasn't until I went to university and my mother made me apply for a Māori Education Foundation grant, and I remember going in and sitting before Sir John Bennett, Elizabeth Murchie, and one or two others. And I was, 16, 17. And they asked about my academic thing and all of that. And they asked me if I was in the Māori club. And I said no. And I remember John Bennett looking a little disappointed. Anyway, they appreciated my record at school. I played some stuff on the piano, and they liked that. And I got some money. I think it was something like $350, which in 1976 was an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
And as I left, I met a Ngaitahu woman who, far darker than me, knew her culture more than me. She didn't get anything. And I thought, shit, there's something not quite right about this. Here I was getting some money for something that I biologically was, but culturally wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
The person who's far more Māori than me, they got nothing. So I thought I better go and do something about this. So I went to the Māori club that night, later that week, in the upper common room. And I just had one of those moments, bro. It's just an epiphany. It was, you get up and you're singing, haere mai, all of those things. And I still remember now the shivers up and down my spine, feeling, far out, what's happening here? I don't know what these words mean, but I like the feel of these people. I like the sounds. I thought, shit, this is me. So the lecturer at that time was a fellow called Bill Napier, Tawaro Napier from Tokomaru Bay. And he was kind of like the co-master of the club. And I said to him, oh, Bill, I think I'd like to change my subjects. And I'll drop some of these and I'll follow up Māori. And so, yeah, that was that night. And I've written about this elsewhere, but I went home to tell my mother how excited I was that, I've discovered this Māori thing, and there's a whole lot of Māori at university. And I mean, yes, of course, you're thinking, I didn't know what to think, but I knew there was parties. I knew there was a new world to explore. It wasn't long since I had to be home by midnight at home. One night a week back at midnight. And I'll never forget the day I finished 7th form, my mother took that rule off, and she just let me go, whatever it was. And I remember being grateful, because that was a big thing for a parent. the day that her child finished school, all those curfews, all those rules came off. So I was in a mood to kind of explore, if you like. The social side of me was starting to get curious. Anyway, I came home to tell my mum, and I have never seen her so upset. She hit the floor screaming and wailing and crying and begging me not to do it. Basically, she said I would ruin my life if I learned the language, and everything that she'd done would be just down the toilet. And the reason she said that was because all she could think of was the racism that she and my father had suffered in Christchurch back in the 50s. And in fact, very much so that, when they came up from Ocean Beach to Christchurch, they would, with a name like Stephens, and my mother ringing up, there's a flat for Adrian Stephens, and then suddenly Vince Stephens turns out to be brown. Hello, the flat goes, it's gone. And then they eventually met a landlady called Mrs. Alexander, who had a place in Slater Street. And Mrs. A had never met a Maori before in her life and couldn't have cared less. So they got the flat, which was just as well, because apparently I was conceived that night in a fit of relief.
We made it.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I came to tell her of my pride in learning the language, all she could think of was the downside. And she knew my father's story and all the racism that was exerted upon him in his way, in his time. And so it took a long time for her to get better with the idea. And probably, I suppose it's funny, really. When I got my first calling card with my first job, I think that was when she came to terms with it all and accepted it.
Yeah.
You could see that my knowing aspects of my culture was going to provide me with a career. And she could see I was happy, and she could see that I was on a path to fulfillment. And, she was, at that time, she only had people like Rangi Walker's writings to be able to turn to for insight into the political situation. Christchurch was a bit of a backwater in terms of race relations back in those days. A lot of the things that were happening big time were happening in the North Island. So that discovery of my Māoriness at that night as a student set me on a journey that eventually enabled me to go and find my tribe, find my grandfather, and discover all those kinds of things. Now, the other thing I remember vividly was that so keen was I to learn the language that eventually, and I dropped out of varsity. I figured that the bits of paper weren't going to suit me for whatever it is I wanted to do, because I figured that whatever it is I wanted to do, it was going to be with Te Reo, with Te Ao Māori. And that's where I wanted to go. I just discovered my tribe. I wasn't interested in exams. I wasn't interested in, I was just want to gap it to the north. And leave Christchurch, and so I made a commitment to myself then that whatever job, whatever career, whatever things I would do, I would ensure that the language was a part of it, that Te Reo had to be there. I wanted Te Reo to be a part of my workday, really, so that when I came home, I didn't have to sort of, do the dinner, feed the kids, then suddenly open up your books and you're too tired to. And so consequently, that was my guiding light in terms of my jobs. I wanted to make sure I wanted to work with the language. My first job was with the Race Relations Office, so I spent 4 years there, and then I got into TV. And so it's always been like that. I've always had the language and the culture as a part of my daily work. And, that's one reason, I suppose, why I feel content, why I feel successful. Because every day in that journey has been contributing to my own journey of self-exploration, self-acceptance, and trying to, I suppose there are three things I've tried to do with my life, work-wise. Firstly, contribute to the kaupapa in some way. Secondly, assuage whatever creativity I've got in whatever way, deal to that. And thirdly, provide a living for my whānau. So those have been the three things within the overall context of doing this in Te Ao Māori. And that's what defined my aims back in the day, and I stuck to it.
Nice. I love. I think a lot of people are looking for that thing. You found yours, fortunately, just at college age. And I think people have this idea in their heads obviously from the examples that I've seen myself. Everybody's different. People think you have to have it figured out at college age. You think you have to find that thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think it's a shame if people think that and they don't find that thing, that light, that guiding light at college age, and then they just give up and they say, oh, maybe I just won't find it.
Yes. Yeah.
I think you owe it not only to yourself but to your whānau and to the people that you could affect positively.
Yes.
To stay curious and to keep looking for that thing if you haven't found it.
Yes. I mean, I suppose if my family started in the working class, very much in the freezing works, and they worked hard to put us into the middle class. Part of the middle class thing is to get your education, go for a university thing, get the mortgage.
Yep.
All of that, kei reira ngā here hoa, all that kind of stuff, if you're not lucky, can really slow you down in your journey to see who you really are. And I think that, I don't know what I could have done if I didn't have those moments of discovery in my teen years. I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't surrounded by people who were loving and patient of me as I tried to do things and look for things. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't find myself in a world where my mind and my heart and my spirit have been so engaged, I suppose. The things you experience in the Māori world at a tangi, at a hui, with the right kind of spectacles, you can only be astonished at the depth of wisdom, at the depth of love, and all of this. A lot of the stuff comes together in the figure of Moana Jackson, but then again, so many others as well.
Yep.
So many others as well. Yeah, I think part of that too has been looking for not just my Māoriness, because I think I find that as the more I've learned about being Māori, I haven't felt any more Māori. I've just felt more human, really. It's the same with indigeneity, the indigenous peoples of the world. I think our time is coming. I'm absolutely sure of that. The planet is rooted in so many ways, and the peoples of the world know, they're starting to wake up to the fact that indigenous thinking, whether it's in terms of environment or personal relationships, spirituality, creativity, there are lessons in there that are of benefit for our species, not just Māori, not just New Zealanders, but for our species. And I think that in the indigenous gift to the world is becoming more apparent, but also to New Zealand's leading role in all of that. And it's sometimes perhaps an uncomfortable weight to carry, but no matter the real bigotry, racism, and awful things that have happened in the colonization of this country, Māori and Pākehā, as a colonized, as an indigenous people and a colonizer, have kind of gotten on to a greater degree than probably any other different races around the world. There's a whole lot of reasons for that, historical, geographical, and all of that. But I still find it brings me contentment, I must say, that the potential of Māori and Pākehā finding an accord in this country will and does already inspire others overseas. Our little country punches above its weight in a whole heap of ways. And one of the things I've found in some of the film work I've done is when we've had American film producers or executive producers come over and see the way we do things, they're just full of admiration. And it's also, and I got to say too, because it occurs to me, one of the things that's really cool about the way we're perceived by some American film producers, or English as well, is that when we say to them that, okay, we want to make this film, but we want to make it sure it works for our Māori audience first, before we make sure it works for the London audience or the Sydney audience or whatever. And the thing that makes me smile, bro, is that they accept that, and they know that, because they know very well that a Māori audience will make a noise if something is right, as it should be.
Yes, that should be the norm.
Māori, the indigenous people in Aotearoa, New Zealand, ain't going to just lie back and take it if their mana is being trampled upon or something is being disrespected about the way we are. And that engenders respect and an awareness internationally. And so when they come out here and they have that understanding that we are a force to be reckoned with, and that when they see how we function, I mean, filmmaking is teamwork, really.
Yep.
Like a sports team, like any team thing. And when you engage tikanga, the dynamics of a team, are just fantastic. Just fantastic. And so, you know, people from overseas can't help but be impressed by that. The efficiency of it and the humanity of it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The humanity of it. I want to ask you how, because we were just talking about our Maori people and how we'll make noise, you know, and the same is also true for when we see something wrong and we maybe split down the middle. For example, you know, there are times as artists in any genre, any medium, creating Māori, toi Māori of any form, you're not going to be able to cater to all Māori. You know, there are going to be some Māori who have a different version. You know, for example, I've done Atua Māori illustrations and things over the years, and I've had some people say like, "Yep, we love it," and then some say, "Nah, that's all wrong." You know, and for yourself, having told Māori stories, how have you navigated that line, and how do you know when to cater to some of the people who say it's wrong, and when their opinion isn't the most important opinion? You know, for example, you're telling a story about Whina, you know, for telling that story, and obviously the most important opinions of that story are her whānau and her hapu iwi, and you may have other people who are from outside of that circle who have opinions. How do you navigate that sort of space, if I'm making any sense?
Oh, that's a really important question, Te Hau. It's a really important question. In the first instance, I think you have to be brave about your vision and compassionate about the way you pull it off. But the big thing for me in a way is, although I've made a lot of things for mainstream audiences or Pākehā audiences, I don't see it like that. To me, I've only made stuff for Māori audiences. Now, there are two audiences, if you like, in the Māori world. Tuakana Taina. There are those Māori who understand their culture, language, and all of that. And there are those Māori who have a Taina understanding, or perhaps no understanding of their language and culture, but they're no less Māori. And so if I'm making something for a more Māori audience, maybe with more language, no subtitles, whatever, that's one thing. But if I'm going to make it for mainstream, for a Pākehā New Zealand, say, I'm thinking about Māori who don't yet know their language, who don't know their culture. So you frame it with them in mind, and you can't help but be inclusive to Pākehā, because you're speaking the same, not so much Māori 101, but an elementary or an introductory kind of way. So I've always thought of my audience as being Māori, with either a tuakana or teina understanding of who they are. Now, that's one thing. But the other thing too is that I think a big challenge for our people is to actually accept, and diversity of opinion is one result of that. When we try to be Māori, we have the right to be everything. We have the right to be wrong. We have the right to be clever. We have the right to be dumb. We have the right to be human. I mean, the question, what's a Māori program? What's a Māori piece of I mean, and many people have their own kind of definitions. Some say, I've got the 3 W's: whānau, whakapapa, and I've forgotten whatever perhaps. But I mean, everyone has. There's no right way and wrong way.
Yeah.
You look at the whare tapawha model. There are so many models, and I'm not going to say one is right, one is wrong, because they're all work in some way. There are so many truths. There are so many models. There are so many points of view. Our big challenge is to accept our everythingness. Really, there is no one Māori way to be like this. There's no one Māori opinion. And so I've entered into this kind of thing, accepting that we are everything. We have the right to be everything. That's just a normal part of normalization, if you like. And we all talk about normalizing the language and the culture. And so, yes, our everythingness is something that we've got to get our heads around. And one of the things that thrills me over the years as I look at Māori news with this Te Karere Whakaia is seeing more and more areas of life or new occupations where someone speaks Te Reo. It's just spreading out. It's just spreading out. But Māori, we can be anything and everything we want to be. And so when you come to make a program or a film like Whina, or whatever it is, I mean, I'm just writing at the moment a piece for I Tangata about a documentary I did on the Māori battalion. And I had to make a decision. I decided to take one person from each company on this particular trip overseas. Now, I knew at the time that I would get bollocksed because it so happened that the men I'd chosen were all officers. They were 5 majors, and 4 majors and a padre. And at the time, I anguished over it, but I thought to myself, well, I'm being guided by the people who are telling me these are the people you should take.
Yeah.
It so happens that they happen to be majors. Yes, you can feel that the ordinary soldier, if you like, has missed out. My job then is to make sure that the majors speak for the ordinary soldier. You've got to make sure that your vision is wide enough so that with whatever you've got, you can be as inclusive as you need to be. It depends on the story too. So, I think one of the things you have to realize as a creative person that, everything you create, whether it's a portrait of an atua or a film, these creative things are your babies.
Yeah.
And you feel for your babies. And you take the view of other people seriously. But I got over that. I got over quickly worrying about what people thought, as long as the people I respected thought well enough. And if I had enough people I respected liking my work, I wasn't too worried about anyone else. But you have to expect that not everyone will like your stuff. And yeah, so what? You can ask yourself why they didn't like it. They may inform what you do, and there's learnings to be had in that. You also, after 6 decades or so that I've been around, but realize that not everyone is a nice person. There are all sorts of people that make up this rich tapestry of our humanity. And but even not nice people, even assholes are people as well and deserve respect, or at least distance and courtesy of not being involved.
Stay out your way.
Yeah, you don't need to be rude to them. There's no reason to be rude. So actually, in our search for our identity as Māori, accepting that we are everything being can be, with an indigenous flavour, again, that just it's great. It's great potential for curiosity.
Yeah. Yes, back to that curiosity again. And the reason I brought that question up is because as the internet is so big now, and especially with social media, and social media has given everybody a voice, which is a good thing. And just like everything, there are negatives. There are cons to everybody's voices being projected out to everybody. And one of the things was creating or sharing Māori stories, whether it be through art in all forms, poetry, visual arts, music, and everybody. Not obviously, when I say everybody, I don't mean everybody. This is me generalizing, but you have people's opinions coming in and saying that my opinion is right, yours is wrong. You've been taught wrong about that thing, and sort of. I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's made it a touchy space to want to even create sometimes.
Yeah.
Because of more of the negative voices being heard. And I say negative in air quotes because it may not be negative. It may be the right thing you need to hear. But a lot of times it's things that are discouraging as opposed to encouraging. For example, I think this example of encouraging someone saying, "Oh, bro, like that thing you said, have you heard about this other? This is a version that I learnt." Instead of going, "Bro, that's wrong. You're an idiot," and just totally disheartening them from their journey through learning more about being Māori.
Yeah. I think there's to me there's a bit of bullying going on in this,
for sure,
intellectual and emotional bullying. I do worry about a gap between the cultural haves and the cultural have-nots. I do see from time to time people using their knowledge as a weapon or as a means of elevating themselves. And those are just human characteristics of perhaps hubris or arrogance or whatever. But I do worry that, well, maybe worry is too strong a word, but I am aware that that kind of intellectual bullying can sometimes happen. In one way, it's simply because being Māori has become a categorized thing, and being Māori has become a cool thing. And so to be Māori, does it fit? Do you fit the actual definition of what a Māori is? Now, that's all crap. And the thing about all of that is that, one of the things I think right away as you talk there is that tribes have different meanings, different stories. And there's no way I could ever say to a tribe beyond my own, Te Rarawa, that their version of the origins of our people is it's just such a ludicrous thing to even think about. And in fact, when you think about it, what I love is all the difference. I love that some words mean this in one iwi and mean something else somewhere else. I love it that there are different types of twangs in terms of dialect. I love it that people in some iwi are really succeeding, but behind in other areas, but another. Each iwi in this country has its own personality. And although I live in a town, Otaki, which has a wonderful story of regeneration, that only happens to be our personality. The things that happen in Otaki, I couldn't suggest would work, say, in Tuhoi or Matahi or Matawaia or whatever, because every part of the country has its own personality. And we should accept that.
Yes.
We should accept that. And when you start saying that you're better than someone else, all that whakamana bullshit has been going on ever since we've been around. Really. It's just kind of realized in these ways because being Māori requires a certain degree of knowledge in the eyes of many people. And if you have it, you are put on a certain pedestal. I remember in the early days in television, sometimes we would have Māori language reporters working in Te Karere when really they didn't have a journalistic bone in their body, but they had the reo. At that time, we really needed to get people with the reo just to exemplify language in a news kind of thing, but they may not have been naturally disposed to being journalists. We've sometimes put people on a pedestal simply because they have the language, and I just don't buy that one bit. I've just seen it. Just I look at my father-in-law, Pete Hakaraya. Doesn't speak a word, speaks very little Māori, but I look at him and I feel his embarrassment when he can't get up on the marae, but I also feel his pride because of what he and his wife did to make sure that their kids had a good living, and they've seen the language and the tikanga come back through the grandchildren. And I
Yeah.
see the pride in his eyes when his mokopuna are speaking Māori. He may not know what they are talking about, but all these people who missed out and missed out on all the things that were stolen from them,
Mm.
how they fought nonetheless to make sure that we had an education, despite that embarrassment. I mean, it's just huge. And I just have such respect and I can't think how hard it must be to actually be in that kind of situation where you have these Māori expectations, but you don't have the language, you don't have this, you don't have that, and you're made to feel a lesser person because
Yes.
that's bullshit. It's just crap. E hara tērā I te aroha. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
I love that we've talked about this because there was a point, I want to say it was about 2 years ago, and there was a little period where I was posting on my social media about this
Mm,
exact discourse
mm,
about te reo Māori, about what it means to be Māori,
mm,
and the different ways that there are to come into your Māoritanga.
yes,
And I think at the point I was just a bit angry at some of the examples of supposed leaders that I had seen,
mm,
and it was around um, that I'm better than you because I know my Māoritanga,
mm,
and thinking of examples in my life of people who know zero te reo Māori or very little,
mm,
but would give you the shirt off their back,
mm,
and would always lead with humility and love, and never ever say me, me, me. They'd
yeah,
always say, no, no, you,
yeah,
and I grew up with that examples of people like that where it was just like, oh yeah, that's what I think being a good person is, and being a good Maori person is, and then got older and then saw oh, I know all of this stuff. I don't have to do any of that stuff,
yeah, yeah,
And I was
yeah.
just, a bit disheartened actually.
Well, actually, I mean, it is disheartening because it's when you're let down by human beings or fellow humans who may be whānau, it can be a disappointing kind of thing. But one of the things that occurs to me that, although I can speak te reo, I know what tikanga do and all that kind of thing. When I've been to tangi for people I've loved, I've felt satisfied and fulfilled as a grieving person, as an ordinary grieving human being. And that's why I'm grateful to tikanga through
Mm,
moments of crisis. They can help you as a human being understand your humanity, understand grief, your place in the world, all that kind of stuff. And when you see the sheer, what's the word, usefulness or efficacy of tikanga to help us achieve our humanity, particularly in the tangi space,
hmm
particularly in the tangi space, that capacity for our culture to enable us as human beings to cry or to feed each other or to offer aroha and support to
mm,
uplift the mana of others. Those are the tikanga that count. However it happens, whatever works in a way. And if you want someone to feel better or to be able to cope with grief or illness or to be able to share joy, all these very human things are fulfilled in our lives because we've got the guidance of tikanga. And if we don't share that beauty with others, all shame on us, as far as
mm,
I'm concerned. If someone's in grief just because they don't know the right noun and the right adjective, that doesn't have anything to do with the way you should treat them as a human being.
yeah.
Um, I remember, people like Wharehuia Like Wharehui Milroy, I watched a program of his once, and he said one of his greatest shames would be if his children let people down. He was worried about his kids. So for all of his knowledge and everything, what was of most importance to him was the life of that he and Niwa raised good children. That was what was most important to him. And I remember, for all his traditional knowledge, there are moments he would turn, when it came to karakia, Christian karakia. Maybe because the people who were there didn't understand the deeper stuff. I don't know. But I remember asking a kaumātua once, John Tuday, what is it that you fellas do? What is it that kaumātua do? And he said to me, boy, we bring peace. And that's it.
We bring peace.
Simple as that. It's as simple as that. And so whether you are kaumātua, because not long after that, I was at a hui, and quite a hui where someone found a broken piece of greenstone somewhere. Gave it to Whare Huia, who took it away. And he did something, don't know what, but he brought peace. So whether you do that with English, with Māori, our Māoriness only enables us to be human. That's all it does. To be unafraid to be human. To cherish that curiosity and to know what to do with it.
Yes.
And, the word manakitanga is a beautiful word to me because it's not just about hospitality. It's about uplifting the mana of other people. That's the point of whakaiti in a way. That's the point of humility. And I don't know, bro. The more I discover about tikanga, the more I'm impressed by the simplicity of them and how they deal to some of the very basic needs of we human beings. As I say, each tribe has its own personality, and we should cherish that. I don't, sometimes I think we get into a bit of the rat race kind of a way to a whakataetai kind of world. We live in a world where there's competition for resources, there's competition for attention, there's competition for houses, for jobs. And in that unfettered sense of competition, people are hurt, people are destroyed. And I don't have any time for that, but I turn with safety to tikanga that tell me this is the way I should act when these people are in pain. This is the way we should act when you're meeting those people. This is the way you should act, whatever, when a child is born. And, part of my contentment is seeing that tikanga work and feeling that tikanga work. And they will carry on long after I've gone. At the moment, we're talking a lot about, and I'm blown away by cosmology and the machines that we have going to the stars, and our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren's time will be moving off Earth. We'll be hanging around tarangi tū ha. So what do we do with our tikanga then? I don't think it's the right noun and the right proverb. I think it's more how we realize those important feelings of love and respect and concern and shape them for a different way. As our old people used to say, me mate anō ngā tikanga, ki ora ai ngā tikanga. Sometimes you got to change your tikanga. That's why tikanga are a category, because they're in our control. They're in our control.
Yes.
And if you've got a good heart and a good mind and a good soul, you'll make good tikanga.
Oh, I love that. That's I literally around that same time I was posting about my disheartedness. I was talking about tikanga as well, and how with COVID, obviously tikanga has had to change. Especially around tangihanga and things like that. And I remember learning this lesson, and it was from one of our kraua in Te Waimana, Hohepa Kireopa.
Oh,
and it was about tikanga, and
Yeah.
it was a story of I think it was like a pig head in a pot at the marae, and then there was the tikanga that was created. I don't know if the story was real or not, but it was to prove the point. And you had to cut off the snout, I think it was, to put it in the pot. And then generations had passed, and then nobody knew why. Nobody knew why you cut the snout off. And then come to find out, it was to fit in the pot, back in the day, And then I think he said something to the degree of not all tikanga is, super deep. Sometimes it was literally for practicality, and it's important to realize that there are different levels of depth with tikanga, and not to just place immense depth on every single thing to the point where it's restricting your life and not opening your life to be more fulfilling for not only yourself but for others as well.
Yes, yeah. I mean, Hohepa was a wonderful. I was thinking before as we were talking, he was a tohunga who was quite happy to use English, and I remember at the time, he didn't kare hakeaya. The main thing was whether it was Māori or English, to bring peace and to relieve the pain or the hurt or the illness of that person. He did what was required to show love to another human being, with all the tools in his considerable mind and kete.
Yes.
Whatever works, bro.
Whatever works. And we're just getting to the hour mark, so this is our wrap-up point, and I think that's a beautiful way to end. We spoke about curiosity. We spoke about nurturing that childlike nature and not letting that childlike nature disappear. We talked about searching for your guiding light, whatever that may look like, and not stopping until you do find it. And we've talked about some of the hurdles and difficulties of following that guiding light. And sometimes it may be in the unexpected place of your own backyard. It may be, your own people in some cases, especially if you're working in Te Ao Māori. And then now we're speaking of treating people respectfully, bringing peace to spaces that you find yourself in. And the thing about bringing peace to spaces like that is it's selfless. You're not just thinking about yourself. You're thinking about making everybody else in that space feel comfortable, feel respected, feel heard and seen. And I think those are principles that are beautiful ways to navigate through, especially a space like the spaces that you always find yourself in, which is producing, directing, writing, which is often a space with a lot of collaborators. They're carrying those things. I think, you've already shown it, and it's important to have principles like that so you don't lose yourself or do things that you may regret. And so that you feel content in how you navigate. How's that?
Bro. Hey, Te Hau, it's lovely to speak to you. The conversation went quite a different way to I expected, and I enjoyed it very much, mate.
Oh, me too. Again, thank you very much, Tainui, for your time, for your knowledge, for sharing us a small snippet of your journey. I know we didn't get to much of the storytelling stuff, but I think the things we did speak about are foundational things. Things that that can help traject you into the right direction and can help make all of the storytelling aspects have weight, have meaning, have purpose, and you can do them with other people in mind as well. But yeah, very grateful to you, Tainui, and can't wait to see Whina when that comes out. And I hope everybody who listened, whether live or recorded, you got some value out of this kōrero.
Ka pai. Tēnā koe Te Hau, mihi nui atuna ki a koe hoa. Thrilled to spend time with you, e hoa.